So, welcome to Grid Tactical Tuesday. This is our cash machine call for everybody in that agent investor world. We're showing you exactly how you build a cash machine that predictably produces revenue so you can predictably produce profit. That is the name of the game. Profit is the oxygen to your business. And once you do that, you earn the right to go invest. And the reason we play the agent investor game is along the way, you can start this. You could be doing things like house hacking yourself right out of the gate to maybe start investing before we've all earned the right to invest. Because if you're anything like the rest of us, you're going to start a little sooner than you should. It's the entrepreneurial urge that that drives us. It also creates some challenges. And we have Mike on here for two reasons. Mike, you don't know this. One, coming out of GridCon, wanted to have a conversation of what is something that I know that everybody that attended this, everyone in our audience could do immediately and to put into practice. Like, what's the most basic play? I think if you don't have this in your wheelhouse as an agent investor, this is the most foundational play. This one thing will set up more opportunity than almost anything else. The only thing I could argue could be similar is if you run an investing community and you're inviting people directly. Mike does both, by the way. Mike's a leader for a grid and Reston. But those are the only things I think that really hit everything, set you up for success. Like, so Mike, tell us a little bit, like, walk us through your story. How'd you get introduced to house hacking? Why is it something you focus on?
Well, like I said, I started out as an investor first. So that was really appealing to me right off the bat. Learning about the power of investing in real estate not just being the place you live, but for most people, it is their largest asset. For most people, when they're getting towards retirement age, their
Yep.
biggest asset is their house. Um, so I got to thinking, how do you turn your home into a better investment vehicle? I started learning about it. House hacking was a thing already, and it helps accelerate the process so much quicker when you're reducing your out-of-pocket costs every month, and then you can use those additional funds to invest in other vehicles, rinse and repeat the process. And I live in an expensive market. Most people, if I mean, most people below 40 really, they believe that owning a home is basically impossible. Our price to rent ratios are very tough. Like if you're looking at it on a monthly basis, it costs almost half the price to rent the same house as it would to purchase it and have a mortgage on it at today's current interest rates and the prices homes are selling for.
You're in Northern Virginia, right, Mike?
Yes.
Yeah. And four of the, economic sleep clues, four of the 10 wealthiest counties by median income are in Northern Virginia, right?
Yes.
But median again could be a little misleading when we're looking at things like these really high upper levels for housing and things like this, right? You've got a real strong demand, especially the city keeps expanding, it seems like, right? In terms of high earners and high income neighborhoods. And so then like,
Yes,
yeah,
completely. And we're East Coast, we're Virginia, one of the oldest states. The housing demand has really outpaced the supply as well, which it helps cause those prices to go up. But it's an expensive market and it's far cheaper to rent than it is to own on a monthly basis. But
mhm.
part of the house hacking strategy is me showing people that while on a monthly basis it may be cheaper to rent than own, if you house hack, what I consider a home run for house hacking, just to give people a baseline in my area, if you can own the home for the price of rent, you've won because now you have an asset. You're still paying every month what you would pay to rent, but you own it.
Yeah. When you get just to close the loop, what got you into real estate investing? What was attractive to you about that? Was there a book you read, or did you hear someone talk about it? Or
I've always been interested in investing generally, like stock market. But I mean, even as a kid, though, I would read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, books like that. I've always been very interested in it.
yeah,
Um,
that one
the
book. More
Yeah.
people have read Rich Dad Poor Dad. We talk about this than anything else. I don't know what it is. Yeah.
The the real estate thing took a bit of a back seat, partially because of the price of the market. It just seemed easier to invest in, stock early on. Um, and then probably, I guess 8 or 9 years ago, I was like, I don't need to buy here. I don't need to buy in Northern Virginia, and I could still own rentals. So I bought out of state. I got connected with some people, and and then yeah, like that was going well, and I really enjoyed it. And I was like, I just want to do this full time and help other people do it. So that's why I became an agent.
Oh, I love this. So you get exposed to it. You believe in the power of real estate. You're open-minded. You buy somewhere else, have some positive experiences with some agents. You said, I'm going to do this myself. You know, here's a couple of things we talk about, and I'll frame this, and we're going to go into talking about this. 7 levels of freedom are our roadmap, this entrepreneurial roadmap that every one of us is following. Level one is energy, foundation, mindset, right? What I've noticed, habits, like that's actually a strong piece, Mike. We're going to come back to that at the end. I want to talk about some of your habits because you're one of the most consistent guys that I know. And I think it makes a big difference. But, like being exposed to that idea too is predictable income. Like, how do I do the job of being an agent? How do I consistently ring the bell? We've got a couple frameworks within Casa, the 4 C's. How do I create content that creates conversations, that leads to connection, that then converts to closings? It does not have to be a newsletter or a piece of social media content or something like this. It could be what you're doing, a webinar or a seminar is content with people. We talk about zoning our market. Like, how do we actually zero in our avatar, own the mind share, nurture those relationships, expand our influence, and right, we earn we earn the heart share that leads to the mind share, it leads to market share. Really simple stuff. Like when we're thinking about how to create relationships, house hacking. I love that you have funnel there in small word. Like that is the right. Hey, what's the avatar that you're focusing on when you're thinking, hey, I want to go do like a house hacking 101? Who are you trying to reach? Why did you do this? What's the avatar you wanted to zone in on?
Yeah, they're typically young professionals. And when I say young, I mean, under 40 usually. Now there are people over 40 who house hack as well. And I love it. Like I think everybody should do it. But I tell people who, whether I meet them at Grid or they come to a seminar of mine, it's like, if you don't have kids yet, like you gotta house hack. You gotta do it. Like set yourself up for life. Even if you're like, oh, I don't want, to be a landlord or have someone in the basement. That's fine. I respect everyone's decision ultimately, but I do absolutely push it, maybe you could say, on people. I just really go through all of the benefits. And like we'll talk about some of them today, but a few years of I have a roommate, especially when you're young, a lot of times you still remember college, you had roommates. It's not a big deal to you, so it's like if you can start now, you can change your whole future with a decision like this. So I just think it's really powerful.
It's the question Rob asks, and I was asking someone this, Rob, in a different context. What price would you pay for freedom? Us having a conversation, with a family member about mental health and just, some challenges, but like in terms of treatment and pursuing treatment and lifestyle changes, it is like, what price would you pay for freedom? And like, just in a very just open-minded, like, if I can get totally free, then maybe going through the annoyance, the discomfort, and testing medication, all of that stuff. I think it applies to all these things in life. What price would I pay for freedom? What, to your point, Mike, would I go through some temporary? I had a roommate for a couple of years, but I actually became a homeowner. And we know, to your point, the net worth difference between homeowners and renters in this country, the median is 300, the average is 1 million. It is one of the strongest, it's not always correlation and causation, but if you look at these two indicators together, being a homeowner is incredibly strongly correlated to actually having some wealth. Dude, you want to talk? Let's get into it, Mike. Let's
Yeah.
talk about what are we talking about when we talk about house hacking? I'm gonna turn this over to you. Walk us through this, bud.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that, this is I'm not here to do a house hacking 101 per se. Like, here's how to house hack, like as if all of you are going to do it. I would love if you guys did it. I think it's the best, but it's also going to be agent focused. So why it does say funnel and turning buyers into lifetime real estate investors is from the agent perspective. And we'll go through some of this. Like we know the stats, like people, buy and sell a house every 7 years, every 10 years. We hear these numbers with I've been licensed for 5. I've helped several clients buy their second house hack already. And I've helped one person buy their third. They're keeping it rolling. So from your perspective, you're getting more transactions out of your clients as well if they're doing this, if you're focusing on these people. Um,
Because our avatar, Mike, right, is the multi-transactional client. How
yeah,
do we do that? Some of it is us, grid, going directly to investors. But the other thing is having a conversation with Beth or Travis or Corey, to your point, and saying, hey, what if I can show you, put you on the path to wealth, which is going to involve multiple transactions? And so,
yeah.
yeah, I love it, Mike. And this is how it starts at the very top of the funnel, like without a big sphere. And like, this, I love this. So you got two models. Walk me through these two models, Mike.
Yeah, just to give you a high level, like a simple explanation here. I live in a market that doesn't really have multifamily. We have them in DC. I'm licensed in Virginia. You don't see it in Northern Virginia. So I run mostly a co-living model play. You can turn a single family or a townhouse into like essentially a top and bottom duplex where you're renting out the basement separately. That's an option that a lot of people do. Um, but obviously, the more rentable spaces you have, the more revenue you're bringing in every month. So if you're willing to do roommates, that is tops, really. However, some of you might be in markets that do have multifamily. That is really the most straightforward, cut and dry version of house hacking that most people are probably familiar with. If listen to Bigger Pockets or you're into just real estate investing in general. If you hear the term house hacking, you usually think buy a duplex, rent out the other unit, buy a fourplex, rent out the other three. And that's incredible. I mean, I can't recommend that enough. Um, in many of those cases, there are markets where you can live for free, literally, by renting out the other units. Northern Virginia, that's a lot tougher. And like I said, we don't have multifamily. But if you're in one of those markets, that's a great way to go. And I have a friend, 22 years old, just bought a duplex in Maryland. And she's renting out the other unit and she has a roommate in her unit. So she's going to be living very close to free every month.
Mhm.
So you can do a mix of the two, but that is a little bit market specific with the multifamily though, because not all markets offer that.
We've got a limited amount. Though now we're seeing people that are doing new construction. I had someone use down payment assistance, market exploded, waited the 2 years, walked away, had equity, like almost 80K in equity, and then is now in a new construction duplex with the other side rented out to our local KCDC or Knoxville Community Development Corporation.
Yeah, it's
And wanted to get totally free and like, and have zero rent payment. And it's like, we can't do that, but we can get you halfway there. And this next one, it's the journey. I love it. So
no.
we got numbers.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Now, these are the type of things you want to tell your client about. This is an option for them. This is a real life option for them. We all know about renting. You're building no equity. Your money's going down the drain. That is what it is, right? With a
Mhm.
traditional buyer, let's say you're putting 5% down, your mortgage is 3,500 a month. Okay, 3,500. As I said, these are realistic numbers in my market where you will be paying more than rent. That is a fact on a monthly basis. However, you are building equity, so that there is a big upside to that as well. But if you're house hacking, you can put down the same down payment, have the same PITI, but if you rent out a basement and a bedroom, you can now bring in 2,400 a month. And look, I mean, you're paying half of what you would to rent, and now you own the home. I mean, that's a beautiful place to be. This is a grand slam deal. If you can find things like this, and I have plenty of clients who do that, like this is not out of the realm of possibility, these numbers. Like
Mhm.
this is doable. Um, and you're a homeowner and you're paying half of what you would in rent, and you use those funds. You can use them however you like. I always tell people, if you want to go on vacation with them, go on vacation with them. Or you could pay the mortgage down, pay the principal down. You could save it and use it as a down payment for your next one. Put it in the S&P. It's just, it gives you so much flexibility and takes off the financial burden that so many people are feeling.
Well, this makes sense. So, like, here's the real one. To your point, what is a house hackable property? Like, what am
Yeah.
I looking for?
Yeah, that again with the multifamily, it is far easier. They all work, frankly. Separately metered would be ideal, but they don't have to be. You just
Sure.
have to work out the utility thing. But other than that, it's like, I mean, that it's very cut and dry. Now, with what I mostly do, it's townhomes and it's single families. I do have some people who do condos. I'm not a huge fan of condos, especially in this area. We'll see. It's very easy to find the condo fees going up lockstep with increased rents. So you never really get ahead of it the way that I like to see, where you're bringing in more cash flow year over year. But that's just a personal thing. Some people do it, especially if it's an entrance and it's all you can afford. And it's better to get started than not. So
Sure.
that's what I always say. But you want to focus on, for the first thing is to make sure that they fully understand the decision they're making and they are comfortable with it. What I mean by that is I can show you the numbers of renting out, getting a 4 bedroom, renting out 3 of the rooms, or, or going crazy, renting out 4 of the rooms, and you're living on the couch in the living room. And you're like, oh my gosh, look at all, I'm living for free. Look at all this money. This is going to be incredible. And then you hate your day-to-day life. So it's, you want them to ask themselves honestly, like, what are you comfortable with? What a lot of people find is they do want complete separation. So if they want complete separation, you're going to want a basement that walks out. You want a wet bar down there, or the ability to put one in, and a full bathroom. That's really the kind of the base, pole to jump over to give yourself complete separation. Um,
Hmm.
if you're willing to do roommates, that's even better from a revenue perspective. But you want to tailor the property you're looking for to the client's needs. That's very important. If you start sending them a bunch of properties where the basement doesn't walk out and they're clear, I don't want them coming. I don't want to be using the same entrance as my tenants. I don't want to see my tenants. It it's going to sound like you're not really hearing them. So it needs to be tailored. And then location's important too. We're a little blessed in this sense that housing is in such critical need here, especially like entry level housing for young people. You can house hack pretty much anywhere up here. Like you can rent out basements anywhere in Northern Virginia, rent out rooms anywhere in Northern Virginia, easy, no problem whatsoever. I still tell people, put like 5 to 8% maybe aside for vacancy. But the fact is, if you're sitting for a month, you've priced it too much. Like
Yeah.
my clients get inundated with tenant applications, inundated with them. So this is market specific. Understand your market. If you don't have the amount of tenant pool to support it, then trying to be near a university, trying to be near a hospital that has traveling nurses. You just want to make sure that your location matches the profile of the tenant that you want to get. You,
Yes.
you don't want to buy a place that, your tenant pool are people that you would not want in your house, because that's who's going to apply.
I am very open-minded about housing, and where I've lived over the years in some neighborhoods that were I don't know, whatever's before up and coming is when I was living in them.
Yeah.
Uh, and so, like, and I've realized over the years it's not about my preferences. It's the buyer pool preference, it's the tenant pool preference of what makes them feel comfortable,
Yes,
if they grew up
exactly.
in. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, there's a delicate balance when you're house hacking of what am I cool with, and then what are my tenants going to be cool with? Because you need both to be
Yep.
right. Um, just as a case in point here, some of my clients, they will furnish and do midterm or short term by the room. Um, and in those cases, you want to make sure that just like the location, that the furnishings match the type of person you're trying to put in there.
Yeah.
Generally, it's usually like traveling workers for one job or another, like traveling professionals. So like, having a small desk, things like that in the room can go a long way. Um,
Okay.
and you want to make sure that you want to make sure that it has enough parking. That's a huge one that people overlook all the time. If you're in a townhouse complex, for example, and you're not near any street parking and you have one parking permit, but you have 3 rooms you're renting out, you're signing up for a bad time. And when the tenants are like, "Where am I going to park?"
Yes.
And you're like, "Oh, well, there's a street parking like a half mile that way." Immediately their mind's going to go to, what about when it snows? What about when it's pouring rain and I have groceries in my hands, So the parking is important, and so is the zoning. Like, especially if you want to do like a short term, mix with house hacking, not everywhere allows for that. So you want to make sure that it's zoned properly.
Sure.
You don't want to the last thing I ever want to do is have a regretful client, because then I mean, they'll never work with you again. First off, personally, they'll never work with you again. And then also, like, you just don't feel good selling somebody a problem or something that they didn't want, you know.
Yep.
Um, Now, here's where you're really coming in as an agent. I like to think of it as being more than an agent. Like, you're a long-term wealth consultant is how you want to think of yourself. And there's really 3 steps to this. The way I see it is, one, analyzing the current deal that's in front of you, which
Hmm.
is obviously pretty straightforward. Probably don't need to go into too much. Like, you need to understand the numbers of the deal you're looking at and how to relay that to the client. Two is
House
very,
hacking, Mike, it's probably pretty straightforward. It really
very,
is kind of just like do I really know the rental numbers there? And then comps. We all know how to do CMAs, but really I might need some, hey, I'm new to this. Who's my property manager? Who's the guy in my office? Maybe it's Mike. They can give me some advice on market rent. So I'm giving them accurate info on like what they're going to get per room or per basement. Yep.
Yep, exactly right. Number 2 is lending guidance, and this is where it's very important to have a lender like we have Cherie here, to have a lender that understands the long-term goal here. A lot of lenders will be like, "Hey, I can get you approved for this property," and that's it. But it's like, "Hey, what's your long-term goals?" "Oh, well, I want to rinse and repeat the process every 2 years. How am I going to make that work?" And in many cases, if let's say you're qualified for 700,000, if you're buying a house at 700,000 and when you want to move in 2 years, the rents have no way of supporting that number, your debt to income is going to be wacky. And on your next house, maybe you're approved for 300,000, and they're like, there is no $300,000 house I would want to buy. So you need to know that going into it. You need to know their long-term plans. And if they want to rinse and repeat the process every, 2 or 3 years, it becomes critically important to understand, where they want to go in the long term. And that really leads you into step 3, which is like a long-term wealth advisor. Like, how are we going to get this done? How do we hit your 10-year goal? What's the step we have to take today for the 10-year goal?
Are you doing portfolio reviews with your clients, Mike, on a consistent basis?
I typically do them yearly. I don't know if
Cool.
you consider that consistent, but
And
yeah.
I think it's consistent. Yeah. So every year you're doing the like it's fall. Hey Mike, sending you, giving you a heads up. It's time to schedule your annual like portfolio review. Here's my Calendly. Let us know what time. If you don't see it time, right? Let us know what works for you. Looking forward to doing this. But you're positioning them every year so they have an idea of what's happening in their portfolio, talking about that long-term wealth. Okay.
Yeah. And just a real quick thing on the lending guidance, and I'm sure like Cherie could tell you better than me, but if you're house hacking and you are bringing in rent, as soon as you start bringing in rent, I highly advise all of my clients to do it properly, claim that money, pay taxes. When you file, don't hide it, because a lot of them, I mean, they'll take Venmo's cash payments, like, and paying taxes is painful. We all know that. None of us want to do it, but again, when you go to qualify for the next one, if you show I've have no income from this property, then in best case scenario, they're going to go based off of like a single lease agreement. And if you're doing by the room, you're bringing in way more money than what the lease, like renting out the whole property would say. So you're again, it's going to hurt your debt to income to qualify for the next one. So you want to show all of that income so you can qualify for number two and number three. The hardest jump from what I've seen is going from one to two. Once you have two, the first one is cash flowing, it's pumping, it's income when you're DTI, it's no longer debt, it's a net positive. You can just keep the train rolling. But if you mess up on the first one and you overextend yourself, your 2 year, your house hacking every 2 year plan turns into a every 6 year plan. And you know,
This is what Rob asked. What are the most common concerns from these tenants, from these clients?
oh, sorry, I can't see the chat. If it's easy for if you can, yeah, call them out. I'm happy to answer questions. But
No,
yes,
no, we're going to get to questions. That's why.
yeah,
So we have a question section here. I want to get through a framework and we'll pull
yeah.
this off.
So when it comes to the concerns, I would say number one is not wanting roommates, right? That's a big one. What how I like to frame that to people is, all right, I call it the comfort continuum. When you're house hacking, the more comfortable you are, most likely the less revenue you're going to be bringing in. So if you're willing to have roommates for a year or two in order to set yourself up, kind of like what you said, Justin, like what's the price you're willing to pay for freedom? Um, you can set yourself up much better if you do have roommates. But again, it's a personal decision. If you don't want roommates, then hey, if your market has multifamily, then let's just look at multifamily. That's fine. If it doesn't, like mine, hey, let's find a basement that walks out, that has a wet bar, that you're able to rent separately. You don't need a roommate to house hack. Um, Another one is I don't want to be a landlord. That's where you show them tools. There's plenty
Do you want to uncover what the real stress there is? It the rent collection? Is yeah, the
right.
repairs? Is it like what about this is stressful to you specifically?
Yeah, that's a yes, and that's a great point. And a lot of times people are worried. What I've found is people are worried that they don't know what they don't know, and they might be breaking a rule or something, like they might be running afoul of the law. Something that I always tell people to make them comfortable. And a lot of people aren't even, they don't want to just come right out and say it. And like, I don't know how I would choose a tenant. I'm worried if I rent to my friends, it could hurt our friendship. A lot of younger people are very cool to rent to their friends. They love doing that. But I find as people get older, sometimes they're a little more wary of renting to friends. Um, I recently had my first person who rented to a friend who did get burned, and it did hurt the relationship. So that can happen. Um, but what I tell everybody is like, listen, you are not held to the same standard as a landlord as I am because you're renting your primary. You're not subject to fair housing, for example. 'Cause a lot of women are like, oh, like, do I have to let in anyone who's qualified? What if it's some creepy guy? You can say no. You don't have to rent to some creepy guy. You don't have to worry about um not renting to a man if you're not comfortable with that. What I tell all my clients is do an you want to get the background check done, credit score, all that stuff, the stuff you would normally do. And I'm more than happy to help them with all of that as well. Um, if you're house hacking, I'll help them with leases. I'll help them with anything. Like I just want them to have a good experience. But I also recommend an in-person interview for anybody who's going to be renting your space. Again, this isn't a multifamily situation. In my case, this is someone who's literally in the house with you. Even if it's a basement, like they are in your house. Go ahead.
And this is for the client to do,
Yes.
not for the agent to do.
No, no, this is for the client because they're
Client is
living with
handling the
you.
screening and vetting of these people directly. It's a learnable skill. They have the capacity, to your point, because they are. Me as an agent, nope. I got to follow fair housing. It's a very different, it's a professional landlord tenant relationship. And there's a reason why there's a distinction by that under the law, by the way.
Yeah. No,
Because if
yeah.
you're sharing the same space, I have some very different concerns than if I am a landlord, I own a house. Anyone should have the right to, housing that's qualified for it. So
Mm,
there's a distinction there, but it is a distinction like the homeowner is able to do that, not the agent. So just, you know, you
yeah.
give some advice. You are not involved in the screening of these folks.
No, I want to verify my tenant's credit and income and the obvious, but beyond that, I want to know as little of them about them as possible. I definitely don't want to see them, if I can help it. Uh, for your own home, um people have intuitions, like we're all born with an intuition. Some people are more tuned into it than others, I think. And some people are more willing to overlook it than others. I tell all my clients, listen to it. If you get a weird feeling, a gut feeling at all, the answer is no, and you don't need to explain yourself. Like, you're gonna, yeah, I found somebody else. Um every Every bad story I've ever heard always starts with, I had a bad feeling and I went forward anyway.
Ironically, Mike, that's the advice I remember giving my daughter. We were at a tailgate, the 100,000 people for the University of Tennessee. She wanted to go explore. And I was like, let me tell you something. Every bad story involves someone saying, I felt uncomfortable. And the
Yes.
rest of your life, that is every bad story. So just there you go. Have fun. Be safe.
No, totally.
Not wrong.
I'm right there. And then the other thing is, what happens if I can't find a tenant? Now, we're in a great market here. We don't really run into that problem. You know your markets better than I do, so be realistic. But to be safe, I tell people set 5 to 8% aside. But like I said earlier, the reality is in this market, like that's on the higher side of
Okay.
vacancy, to be real. Um, and then this is what we do. We buy the primary, we house hack it, save that money that's coming in from your tenants. If you put more towards the mortgage, you can do that. If not, you can put in the S&P, high yield savings. It depends on your timeline for the next one, but then we're rinse and repeating. This is what I love about it. It's the slow way to build a portfolio, and you can do it in literally any market.
This is how Rob said he started building his wealth. So Rob was on here. Rob's founder of Cred and of Casa, right? Rob's got a pretty great portfolio. And he said, I rented a townhouse, a 3-level townhouse, and then I rented the bedrooms out to my friends at 250 a room, you know, back in the day. Rob was doing this in 1987. No, it was like 20, he's not that old. This is like 20 years ago. But anyways, yeah, this is and then rinse repeat. I love this.
Yeah, and this is again for the agent perspective. If your client, instead of buying a house every 7 to 10 years, is buying every 1 to 3 year, I mean, I've had clients buy 12 months apart a house hack, Um, if they're buying, every 2 to 3 years, like you're 5xing your number of transactions with that one client, the lifetime value of the one client. And then from the client's perspective, again, this is something that you would want to show them. With our example earlier of the $2,400 a month rent, if you take that 2,400 and just put it in a high yield savings account, you're getting like 3%. Um, the difference in your net worth. Now, I'm not talking about putting that money in the S&P. I'm not even talking about rolling that money as your down payment into the next house hack. Like, this is as conservative as it gets. After 10 years, the renter, of course, has no equity. Um, the traditional buyer might have 180 in their house in this area with our appreciation and our debt pay down, but the house hacker is going to have $520,000 of net worth just from putting that income into a high yield savings account, like something as conservative as it gets. Um, the truth is, if you're more aggressive, or even the S&P, I would consider a long-term general safe investment over the long haul. If you're doing that, if you're putting it into the next property, like after 15, 20 years, you're going to be a multimillionaire j just from renting out the houses that you live in. It's really incredible. I recommend it to everybody, especially people who are young, especially people that don't have kids. It's just it's relatively low friction. Um, it's easy, very easy to do.
Good. I love this. We got some hands raised. We had some questions in the chat. I'm going to start with Zim. Zim, what's your question?
It's more of a statement than a question. I would recommend this to, and Mike has reiterated this, to any single person, right? You gotta, when I started this kind of like Rob back in '85 is when I bought my first place, and it was called getting roommates, but I couldn't do it myself, and so I got a buddy of mine, and we're sitting having coffee, and it's like, hey, we're burning rent money every month, let's buy a place together. And so we actually took a vacation together in Jamaica just to see if we we're compatible, right? And then boom, come back, buy this place, get two more roommates, and then, I guess the suggestion I would make too is if you're doing that, have everything in writing, right? So it was first right of refusal when any of us got married, right? And and that's what we did. Years later, sold it for a profit. He took his half and went on. And actually, Dana and I bought the other half from him and then sold it 3 years later, again for another profit, right? So it's easy to do. You just have roommates, and which is cool, And like you said, Mike, you have total control over your roommates because you aren't governed by anything. You can go, yeah, no, dude, you can't be here.
So, you know, Travis asked a couple different questions. We'll start with the potential problems and we'll go to the opportunities. Trav asked, hey, if I've got a roommate, and this is state by state to be very clear. So if you're not in Virginia, just know we live like in the exact opposite scenario here in Tennessee in terms of tenant laws. But is it different evicting a roommate than just evicting a normal tenant?
Justin, you hit on it. That is going to be state specific. In Virginia, it's the truth is it's not that difficult. I guess I would say in comparison to other areas.
Yeah,
Like we're right next to DC.
DC.
Yeah, right. We're right next to DC where it's an absolute nightmare. Compared to that, getting an eviction in Virginia is pretty easy.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, the eviction process is relatively easy. Luckily, I've never because you have that additional layer of, I guess, inquiry into the tenants. I have yet to have a client that had to evict a tenant. Like even the one that went bad between those friends, she did leave on her own because of like the weirdness. Like no,
I, I've lived with roommates, Mike, the majority of my life up until maybe the last four years. Always have had roommates. It's yeah. Living alone in single family residences is a very new societal invention. Just one person in a house to themselves. That is not a that is not how it's worked for a long time. I think people are inherently good. So yeah, can be different. So Trav, certainly something to be aware of, and that's also like a resource thing. Hey, let me connect you with, here is the person, here is how you do this, here's how you serve the notice, all those other sorts of things. Like software can help with those. The biggest thing with those I've seen, Trav, is people don't stick to their timelines. So you got to do like the 10-day notice or whatever, and like do them like when you're late on rent or something, like have this be like an automatic software process. So you're not losing well, now they're 2 months behind and I'm starting the process. That's being on the property management side professionally. That's the single biggest difference. Now, Trav asked on the opportunity side, have you pulled, buyers out of the tenant pool of these
yes,
these like house hackers?
yes, I have. I've helped the roommates of people that I helped house hack buy homes. I have done that. They're living in it in their, thinking about it from their perspective. Okay, my roommate owns the home. I know what that's doing for him. I'm the tenant paying rent. I want to be the owner. Live in an identical situation. I'm going to have roommates. I'm going to be living just like I'm living today, but now I'm the homeowner. Like that is appealing to a lot of people. So I have helped people do that. In fact, one of the tenants that I helped end up buying a house and house hacking, next month I'm going to a party at his house. So I'll meet his tenants, I'll meet his roommates, and we'll keep the ball rolling.
So that's great. Uh, Dr. Risha asked, do you recommend creating a real estate LLC for house hacking?
When it when you just have one and it's just your primary, I don't think that it's necessary. This is my opinion and not legal advice. When it's just your primary, I don't think it's necessary. If you want to keep the ball rolling and hold on to the first home, I do recommend then putting it in an LLC if you're going to rent it out as like a co-living space or just a regular buy and hold rental. I do recommend putting that in an LLC. But while it's your primary, I don't think it's necessary. That's just my
The
2 cents.
distinction you're making is, hey, I use LLC for my investment properties. This is supplemental income from my primary. So from Mike's perspective, hey, I'm not creating an LLC for that. Once I'm on the second one, and this is kind of more pure investment play with tenant income, then I could. Cherie, money lady, give us the lender perspective.
From a lending point of view, if you convert it to an LLC, like you're living there and you convert it to an LLC and your goal is to move someplace else, it could trigger what's called the due on sale clause. 99% of the time it doesn't happen, but there's always that 1%. And then you're talking about moving someplace else, and all of a sudden the lender's like, well, why is this in an LLC? Why is the property that you're currently living in that you say you own in an LLC?
Yeah,
So
that you
it
bought as
could,
a primary residence.
yes, it could raise all
Yeah,
sorts of flags. Now, what you could potentially do is put it into a trust. And trusts are recognized a lot more. Again, talk to your attorney in your state with regard to that but from the lending point of view, that would not raise as many red flags.
the one thing we haven't talked about that you just want to be aware of is just liability and insurance.
Hmm.
Like this is anytime you're renting or lend, like any sort of a landlord, do I have like an umbrella policy? Do I have liability insurance? Have I really talked through the coverage limits on that? So if the policy was in place, I mean, some of this is just so much common sense of like, we live in a litigation-based society, and litigation-based meaning that's how we mediate things. I hit Mike and like I have to get the insurance involved. And so then it's got to go through like a legal process and there's got to be enough money coming to like compensate this after the fees and the structures. That's just kind of the way the tort system works. Hey, do I have enough coverage where if Cherie came over there and Cherie like fell off the deck and blew her knee out and couldn't work and like has to go file like insurance claims? And then that sets the whole process. Her insurance is suing my insurance. Like, just do I have enough insurance to cover those outcomes? Because it's not about whether Cherie wants to sue me or something. It is about people incurring expenses that they can't absorb on their own, triggering this like litigation system. That's what we see happen practically.
Yeah.
So am I
Yeah.
adequately insured? Does my insurance cover like, yeah, what if my roommate falls in my house and injures themselves?
Yeah.
I love
So I
that.
had a question actually from Mike, and I apologize if you answered it. I was a little distracted for a second. Um, I'm curious to know when you are looking at potential basement apartments where the renter is going to be living in the basement, and you had
Mhm.
mentioned the wet bar. Um, obviously the person needs a full bath, but are they using the wet bar as like a pseudo kitchen or like t walk me through that a little bit, please?
No, yeah, that's a great question, and the answer is yes. You can obviously like you can have the only sink be the bathroom sink, but it's just like it's so not preferred by people that I just try to stay away from that altogether. So yes, you want the wet bar because that's kind of the centerpiece of what's ultimately like a kitchenette. I'm not a big fan of putting a range downstairs. A lot of people ask me about that. Not worth it. You get no ROI. Nobody pays more to rent a basement because it has a full oven downstairs. They just don't. At least not in my market. Again, learn your market. But like here, they don't do that. It's an extra layer of liability. You got an oven, and they're very hard to permit, frankly. Like in Fairfax, like it's hard to get an oven downstairs. So I'm a big fan of fridge and then plug-in appliances like toaster oven, microwave, maybe. You can get a little electric
Air
range,
fryer.
I was
air
going to say a
fryer.
hot
Air fryer
plate
is just
thing.
a
Yeah.
countertop-based convection oven.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sounds sexier when
All
called an air fryer. Yeah.
all
So
of that stuff is great. All that stuff
yeah,
is great. But yes, yeah, basically for your kitchenette. You want to put a kitchenette, but it's just a wet bar, and then you have counter space and places to plug in appliances when they're in use. That's it.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure about that. So yeah, I can give a quick lending tip, Justin. I didn't come up here to say that. I came up here to ask the question, but if people
great.
want a
How dare
lending
you
tip.
add value? Get off.
Just the
Go ahead.
lending tip for everybody. So, when your buyers are looking at multifamily, FYI for you, if they are buying a duplex, they must be able to afford the entire mortgage on their own without considering any expected rental income from that second unit. Once they get into buying a 3 unit or a 4 unit, then we're able to take 75% of the expected rental income and add it to their W-2 income in order to get them approved for that loan. So, um, because this is agents, I'm going to say it like this. If you're dealing with somebody who doesn't have a lot of income, sometimes buying 3 units and 4 units, the math still doesn't necessarily work. So, just making sure you talk with the lender and getting them like as fully approved as possible with documents and things like that before, you take them out looking at these properties is going to be important.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And probably obvious to everybody, but just to piggyback on that, like when you're doing the single families or the townhouse, no lender is gonna be, hey, I can rent my basement for $1,500. Like they're not gonna count that either. Like I'm sure everybody knows that, but I just want to, reiterate it. But that is a beautiful thing, like with the 3 and 4 units that you can, if you're right on the cusp there of being able to afford it on your own, and then you can use the rental income to qualify. That's a sweet place to be.
Anyone else have any questions about this play? I have a question for you, Mike. How
Mhm.
many people have you helped purchase homes through this strategy?
Mm, I mean, it's been at least a couple dozen in the last 5 years, maybe between 25 and 30, probably.
Okay. So that's why I wanted to talk about this. Of like, if you're thinking about this, like the reason why I think this is so exciting is let's think about, Mike, if we were to go back to that slide, you had the slide, hey, there's three things I'm doing. Deal analysis, right? Lending advice, right? And wealth consultation. Those are the three distinguishing factors of how do I want to bring myself to the market. Man, if I'm an agent investor and I want to build wealth through real estate, how do I do that? I take my clients on a wealth journey in real estate, and I do this specifically by helping them analyze deals, give them advice on just the plethora of great lending options that are available, and I'm a long-term wealth consultant. Can you see how that is a little different than call me, buy, sell, and invest? I'm dancing in front of a house. Like it's this, I think, is like the one thing, if you just do this, will brand you to the market and you don't need any, and it's a very low entry to start advising people. Hey, I'm advising you on how to get roommates. You can be brand new, you could be very young, you could be in your early 20s. Hey, I'm trying this play myself. You should do the same play. I do not need to be a super experienced investment advisor to start running this play at a high level, provided I know the fundamentals of my real estate market. I understand the rent, right? And I've talked this through enough with the experts on the property management side, on the insurance side, and on the lending side, where I really understand like the potential risks involved. And you can go on that journey with them, right, Mike? And then, you're going to get older. And as you get older, more experience, you're going to do more sophisticated deals. You're going to take your clients on more sophisticated deals.
I would add one thing to that, Justin, which is just lingo, also knowing the lingo. Now I'm 5 years in now. I just hit my 5 years like a month ago, and I've been getting more like referrals. More people know me as like, oh, he helps people house hack. So like that's like become a thing. But when I first started, a lot of my clients came through Bigger Pockets, and they were investment minded people, obviously, and they interviewed a lot of agents. And the reason
Mhm.
that I worked with a lot of them is they flat out told me like, the last guy I talked to didn't know what a cap rate was or didn't know what, you know what I mean? Just kind of like basic like investing lingo, and not even all, having to do with house hacking necessarily. Because like you said, you go on a journey with them, they all have bigger plans. If they're 25 and like, hey, I want a house hack to help propel me to my next real estate investment, they have big plans, big goals that are not tomorrow goals, but they do want to discuss them with you. And if you don't know what the heck they're talking about, they don't see you as like a long-term solution. They're looking for their guy or girl long term. Like, so and you're right, it can be super basic. It can be a super basic understanding, I literally mean knowing the words is helpful. Like
Yeah. And you have access, YouTube University, great has
totally.
100 something videos on there. Investing 101. If you want to learn the lingo, we got you. But yeah,
Yeah.
no, I think you're right. Of like, do I know enough to guide them on there? And just the concepts. That's my last piece on this is what's more important, I think, as agents for us, honestly, is concepts. Strategies are great. I could be in a conference and ask a strategy and ask you some really niche question and it shows off how smart I am. I see it all the time. The biggest challenges I see, Mike, would you agree, are like people failing on not looking at their investment thesis or basic concepts or didn't trust my intuition. It's
Yes.
not that like, oh no, my cap rate formula that's incredibly was off, and this is only a 7 cap and it only works as an 8 cap. That's not what's killing. It's human people, it's capital, it's yeah, making decisions based on emotion. No, I
Yes.
love this. Thank you
Re-
for coming in. I'm gonna brag on you for a second to wrap up. Mike is so consistent. Like this is the other piece of this is like Mike is in the office every single day. You in the office today, Mike?
Dude, I
One
should be in the
time?
office today. My middle daughter left her backpack in my wife's car. So
Sure.
I dropped her off. I'm like, we don't have the backpack. I gotta go get it.
Yeah,
So
but
I couldn't make
am I
it.
right? You're in there like
Oh
5 days a
yeah.
week.
Yeah,
You go
every day.
in, lead generate every day. How many conversations do you try to have a day?
The floor for me is 10. Like that's like, hey, we all know sometimes the afternoons get busy, things
Yeah.
happen, but the floor is 10. I try to get above and beyond that, but 10 is like, it's okay, basically.
Doing 10 a day. You've been in the industry 5 years, right? What are your goals this year to hit as an agent? What's
I want to do 36 transactions this year. The last 3 years in a row, I've been between the 20 and 25, and it's like, and every year I've made more than I did the previous year in the 5 years I've been in real estate. And I'm like, I don't want that train to slow down. I feel like I'm seeing the growth slow. It's still growing, but it's slowing, and it's like, no, we gotta make it continue. You know what I mean?
you're increasing the activity. I just
Yeah.
want to share that like success leaves clues, like shows up. Like Mike is a metronome in our world in terms of like showing up consistently. Mike is in there on the phone, having conversations with people. And so that's the other thing we can all do. That's our big takeaway from GridCon, conversation I had with Rob of all the things we could do, coaching and leading and emceeing these things, facilitating. He says, I'm going to give you the same advice that I'm going to take. The best thing you can do is go take a listing and then repeat it again and then do it again until you have so much cash. Now you have to start figuring out what you're doing with the cash. So I encourage you all, like, who can you go talk to this week that is looking to transact? Like, who is at the top of the funnel? Ask people. You would be surprised, right, Mike? Hey, man,
Totally.
who do you know that needs to do something this month? Once you are doing this professionally, people will be like, oh, you got to talk to my cousin. Yeah. Oh, I didn't even think to ask you. I thought you were the house tech king. I forgot you list house, whatever. Like, you'd be surprised. Like, go ask for it.
Yeah, that is, yes, absolutely. I mean, you said it. That's
Yeah.
exactly right.
Mike, I appreciate you, man. But there's a reason, I wanted to kick off the second half of our year with you. And if you got this, Mike, teaches this like on a regular basis. You can jump in on one of the seminars or one of these webinars. Like he's got it recorded. We've dropped all of his contact information in the chat. Like connect with him directly. He would love to talk to you about this. He's a great resource. We appreciate you, Mike.
Yeah, thank you, man.